Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Hi, Rob Browne here with you on this Thursday morning. A lot to talk about today. Got a great lineup. Connor O'Gara, Saturday Down South, will join us here in the first segment. And, man, I'll tell you what, you cannot get enough college football. It's unbelievable. It's already October 12th. Going into week 7, Connor does a great job of going all over the map. He's prepared for anything. Love having him on here. You need to follow him, folks, if you like, keeping up with what's going on. Second segment. Doug Dean, AU Dose, Frank Duffy, Mr. LSU Tiger, join us, previewing that Auburn-LSU matchup down in Tiger Stadium Saturday night. Hour number 2, ULM AD John Hartwell and Rhodes coach Matt Dean in Memphis join us for the AD angle. Of course, Matt's son is on the staff with Dan Lanning out at Oregon. Love getting a perspective from both these guys, and we'll open it up. We've already got lots of questions and comments coming in. So remember, we're here 6 days a week, 25 shows a month, over 300 shows a year. Love having you on here with us. And Connor, you're down in Orlando. I don't know where you're going to be traveling to this weekend, but you probably got a great game that you're going to be going to. Hell, what game isn't great? If you're going, it's great, isn't it?
I actually don't travel that much, which might come off as a bit of a surprise. I still have to explain to my father-in-law that I don't travel every weekend, which is kind of nice because I think you get kind of burnt out by November doing that. I probably go to like 4 or 5 games a year. So I'll be traveling to my couch, which is great for a weekend like this. And I'll be able to watch all the games. I always tell people, as great as it is to physically be there at games sometimes, with what I like to be able to do and the way that I like to cover this sport, I like being able to watch all the games. And when I'm at a game, that means I'm locked in on that one specific one. I'm thinking about other games while I'm at that game. So to me, it's great to be at home, just on the couch watching 12, 14 hours of college football.
Yeah. And, also you've got a 4-month-old baby. So
that too.
You're a great dad. I mean, I've got, 4 kids. There are years I don't remember. Once from Labor Day, after Labor Day weekend, that was usually off, opening weekend of dove season. It was soccer and, gymnastics or whatever, 2 boys and a girl. And now we're remarried. I got 2 girls now, 2 boys. But, man, I'd give anything to have that back. I promise you. And I love the way you look at it. You got the command center in there. All right. Big, here I got a first question because there's a lot of questions that have come in. I'm going to start with these comments. And I'd have to agree with this one. And this is, Sam in Tifton, Georgia. Of course, we're on the web. We got people listening everywhere because of social media. FSU's a lock for the CFP. You agree or disagree?
I disagree that they're a lock. I think they have a really good path. I think they need to figure out some of their defensive issues, because if they don't, they could be one of these teams that is blown out in a semifinal matchup. And while I do think it'd be huge for FSU to be able to get over that hump, get to the college football playoff for the first time since Jameis Winston was in Tallahassee, I do think, though, that we tend to write teams off that just get to the college football playoff and then get smoked when they get there. Even TCU got to a national championship. We write them off as soon as they, lose 65-7. But I think that their path is still really favorable. I like them to beat whoever gets to the ACC championship. And that's shaping up to be a really good race, by the way. I mean, between UNC and Louisville and Duke is still in the mix. Don't write them off yet, obviously. And I think that this race could be interesting. I mean, Miami is still technically part of it, despite the week that they had. But Florida State, to me, has shown a lot in the toughness. I mean, think about it. We're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of their last loss. They've figured out how to win football games. A team that used to not be able to get out of its own way. Credit Mike Norvell. I know we've talked about him before for having that identity. And clearly his team has totally bought in to that trust and their ability to close out games. Even though they've had some of these kind of sluggish efforts at times this season, they still win football games. And that's about as good as you can ask for right now.
Well, and I like your take on that. Nobody's a lock because you got to play a bunch of games. But I do think the ACC is showing a lot of signs of life. Real quick, shed some light on the Miami meltdown. I remember as a kid watching the Jets play a game. It was an NFL Sunday afternoon. all they had to do was take a knee, and the same
Herm
thing
Edwards,
happened.
right?
People still talk about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's baffling. We'll be talking about this for a long time. I mean, maybe if Mario gets Miami not back to the levels that certain people think Miami can get back to, but at least gets Miami back to relevance and a little bit more of kind of that mid 2010s Mark Richt type level where they're getting to New Year's Six Bowls, maybe we'll move past this. But I think the circumstances surrounding it are so crucial as to why this felt awful. Undefeated team. You should be going to the midway point of the season still undefeated, already with I think a really solid non-conference win under your belt against A&M, the way that you kind of handled them in the second half and bounce back in that game. And to have that all go up in smoke when everybody can flip that game on and watch and see that embarrassment, because it's not just that you fumble the ball there. It'd be one thing if you gave the ball back in your own territory or something like that, and then they just have to kick a field goal, they win the game. It was the fact that you also had the defensive miscue to allow Haynes King, a Georgia Tech's quarterback, and A&M transfer, and Christian Leary, a transfer from Alabama, down here from my neck of the woods in Orlando, to have that moment and have that just unbelievable defensive lapse in those critical moments. It's terrible. It's so bad. And I think we make too big of a deal of these things sometimes. I think that it's perfectly justified to feel that bad about how awful that looked when Miami was just starting to get people back on board with them being one of the premier teams in the country.
Well, even though, Connor, I remember when it all started because we had a good family friend I talked about yesterday. He was an official for 33 years in the South, and Jimmy Johnson would bring him down during the week to work with the team back in 86 through 93. And that's when he told me about the young, wiry defensive coordinator that Jimmy Johnson thought would be a good coach, Tommy Tuberville. And Tuberville got Ed Orgeron, who was assistant strength coach at LSU, said, I called him. I had a friend that knew him. He said, you ought to call this guy. He said, man, back then we had voicemails, a message machine. Ed Orgeron left me a message, and I couldn't understand a word he said. But Jimmy Johnson hired him on the spot. Pete Carroll, Pete Wanstapp, hell of a staff down there. Even then, they were drawing 30, 35,000 to a lot of their games. I know there's a lot to do in Miami, but there's never so much to do you can't go to college football. That's the toughest part about that job. I mean, to me, it is.
I don't know. I think I hate it when people say college football is better when program X is good. So what does that mean then? Then college football the last 20 years when Miami has not been worth anything has just been bad? No, there's no way. I think it's a lazy take. I have a couple of Miami fans in my life. Even living here in Central Florida, you do not see much Miami stuff around here at all. In my neighborhood, I see a bunch of FSU stuff. I'll see a lot of UCF stuff. I'll see Florida stuff. Don't see a whole lot of Miami. That fan support is what it is at this point. They're only able to be a national brand when they're really, really good. And to me, you see that crowd, like even that crowd against A&M, they were giving away seats for that game, and they can't even fill their stadium when they're good. Everybody goes back to when they were beating Notre Dame in that game in 2017, and the U is back, and A-Rod is all fired up, and they're showing him and J-Lo every 2 seconds. That's not Miami. That's not Miami. This job, to me, it is still an uphill climb to be able to get that fan base fully engaged and to actually make that money that they're spending worth it. And to me, that's the struggle that they'll have to overcome, if they're just going to be, even 8-4 or 9-3.
Yeah. All right, let's head up to Knoxville. I mean, we're torn this weekend. We've got an invite to Knoxville, invite to fly to Baton Rouge, and then I've got a client that I'm working on suddenly says, I'm going to be in Memphis this weekend for a wedding. Are you available Friday afternoon or Saturday? So I got to be here. It's unbelievable. But I think A&M right now is up 10-0 in that game. That's not a good matchup for Tennessee. But A&M lost a game to Alabama. They held them to 23 yards. Am I crazy or am I onto something? Or is Jimbo and that thing just never going to work?
I think it's actually a better matchup for Tennessee than what we're probably giving credit for. When was the last time A&M went on the road and truly impressed us? Last year, playing Bama down to the wire when Bama had a backup quarterback? All
Yeah.
right. I don't know. Like, to me, I have questions about how they're going to show up against a Tennessee team that's coming off of a bye week that has run the football mostly very well. Now, they struggled to run the ball against Florida in the swamp, but at home, that atmosphere is going to be juiced. 3:30 game, CBS, I believe. We're talking about a group that should be well rested, ready to go, a chance to make some tweaks. And even though they're going to be without Brew McCoy, I still think Tennessee has a nice advantage. I think this is going to be really tough for A&M after a physical game against Alabama, wherein their offensive line showed some issues. I think A&M's offensive line is going to struggle with Tennessee's front. Tennessee's front has been really solid this year. If you look at what James Pierce has been, Tyler Barron, Aaron Beasley, these guys will get after you, man. Like, they're, I think, all in the top 12 in the SEC in sacks. Tennessee's front is going to give, I think, A&M problems. And despite the fact that A&M's front on the other side of the ball has been great, I think they could kind of be neutralized from Tennessee's offensive line, getting Cooper Mays back in the fold and having a week to be able to prepare for this one. I think Tennessee wins big. And I think it's another one of these games in which we're questioning, like, man, how is this stuff still happening in year 6 with Jimbo with that talent? I love the Petrino hire. I think it's worked out really well. I think DJ Durkin is gone at the end of this season, despite the improvement on the defensive line. But yeah, to me, I think this is a game that the Vols get up big, and I think A&M is just not ready to go coming off of an emotionally draining loss against Alabama.
Well, and I think that the other thing that is weird with me about A&M is you hold a team to 23 yards, you don't lose those kind of games. They somehow seem to find ways to lose. They're creative with it. And with all the money, we think in the last 10 years they've spent over $1 billion. Money is not the problem at A&M. That's my opinion. What about you?
I agree. When you're punting in plus territory 2 different times on 4th down, when it's 4th and 1 and 4th and 6, and you're taking a timeout into the locker room with 42 seconds left from your own 23, when you have a chance to make it a 2-score game against Bama, and you're kicking field goals in spots where you should be going for it, Jimbo Fisher is the problem. He's the problem. And to me, that's why you can look at all this money. And I think if I were an A&M spot at the time, coming off of 2017, after the Kevin Sumlin era fizzled out, and it was pretty evident by the end of it that it wasn't going to work, I think that you would still make that move every single time. Now, you can get into the details of the contract and why they set themselves up for failure, because after 2020, the extension that they gave him is why they have this buyout that's sitting right there, and it's $76.8 million. So Jimbo Fisher's not going anywhere. They're in college football hell, and it's because Jimbo Fisher is past his prime. And that's the biggest issue. Even though he made the smart decision this offseason to finally give over play calling duties, I still think you look at this program as a whole and you think that their upside is limited. They still haven't played in a conference championship in the 21st century. I mean, think about that with the money that's spent on that program. And I'm not holding my breath on them to do it anytime soon.
Yeah, and I've got some good Aggie friends that follow them. They're listening right now. We got some great listeners, viewers in Texas. But here's the thing. In this millennium, 1 double-digit win season. That was the 11-2 year in 2012 with Johnny Football. That's it. 1 double-digit win season. And nobody spends more money, them and Texas. It's just money alone. If money can solve it, it's not a problem. I really believe that. I've been told that by smart people.
Yeah, like it's huge in this day and age. Yeah. And we've spent a lot of time this week talking about it because of Mark Stoops' comments about NIL and about Georgia buying players and how that's legal now. And money does kind of change what you're capable of doing. You can't compete without it. It just doesn't guarantee success. It doesn't guarantee that you are setting yourself up to make the right decision about picking this quarterback versus that quarterback and hiring this coordinator versus that coordinator, this scheme versus that scheme. There are still things that you have to figure out that dollars and cents aren't necessarily going to take care of. And it kind of makes what Alabama has done for 15 years in the Nick Saban era really impressive. And it makes what Georgia is doing in this era, wherein it does feel like, oh, the playing field has been level. It makes it that much more impressive that they've been able to do what they've been able to do. And meanwhile, we're still left wondering why A&M can't get over that hump.
Yeah, I agree with you. And there's a lot of theories, whatever, but I think we're both right. All right, now one of them, I like this. Linda, Clanton, Alabama. That's where DeMarcus Riddick's from, 5-star going to Auburn. Nick Saban is going to win his 7th national championship at Alabama. I think he's so competitive that he's thinking, well, people don't really count the one in 2020, although the circumstances were the same for everybody. But he's so competitive. He wants to get a 7th at Alabama, and Paul W. Bryant has 6. And he's already got one at LSU, so he's already got 7. But I think he's coaching more than I've seen him coach in a long time. And I think Kevin Steele, his 3rd tour with him, that was the first coach he ever hired at Alabama, and Travaris Robinson are helping so much on the defense. I think Nick Saban's having more fun than he's had as a college football coach in a long time. Agree or disagree?
I don't know
if
that
he ever
always
has fun.
Yeah, I don't know that he ever truly has fun. I think there's a certain part of it where I go back to the old Bob Knight phrase, I hate losing more than I love winning. And I think I see some of that with Nick Saban.
Yeah.
But if I'm given the over-under of 0.5 national championships for the rest of Nick Saban's time at Alabama, I'll still take the over. And I'm not saying that I don't think they're going to win one this year. I don't think they have that upside. Even in a game like that on the road, that was a big-time win to be able to go into A&M. Jalen Milroe plays the best game of his career, in my opinion. Still a ton of mistakes. And Nick Saban said afterwards, I've never won a game while making that many mistakes. I still think that this team doesn't have that upside to be able to win a college football playoff, and to get to that level is not something that I think is in the cards. But you're still recruiting at such a high level at Alabama. Yeah. They're still just signing the number 1 class, and they still are going to be active in the transfer portal. And to me, that you got to just set yourself up and put yourself in that position. And I would say that they have a much better chance than a Clemson right now, right? Even if I'm betting, who's got a better chance to win a national championship moving forward, Alabama or Texas, I'll still take Alabama. And maybe that's lazy, but until they show me that they're just not on that level consistently, I'm rolling with the Tide.
All right. I heard you on a podcast. Great job the other day. I think with hogville.net. We had Dudley Dawson on yesterday. Very good. I live in Memphis. I'm over here at the farm, 30 minutes out of town in Cross County. Hog fans everywhere. A bunch of them are listening right now on the combines, cutting the rice and the beans. And they're like going, Rob, you got to ask Connor, because they follow you. They see you. Said, ask him, what do you think Arkansas needs to do? And I'm not in favor. Again, that's not my job to fire coaches. That's not what we do. But I'm a big Sam Pittman fan. But ultimately, you got to win. And they're in a terrible place right now.
I'm worried about Sam Pittman. I am. And I love him too. I mean, every time I've had him on the show each year that he's been at Arkansas, and he's so gracious with his time. He is as likable a coach as there is in this sport. And I truly mean that. And I think sometimes you come across these guys who are, they might be a little bit genuine to your face, and they might have fun with you. And then you're kind of like, you know what? They really don't give a crap. I don't think Sam Pittman is that. I think he's a salt of the earth human being. The problem, though, is that rarely in the SEC do you get 2 years of disappointment. Rarely. And it's maybe a little bit different if you're talking year 1, year 2, but not year 3, year 4. And the issue that he's facing right now is his performance-based buyout. If he is under 500 at the end of this season, meaning his overall record at Arkansas, that buyout is only about like $10 million and change. If he's over 500 or at 500, it's about 15 and a half or 15.75, one of those two. And it's a little bit different. It's a little bit steeper, but it's going to be interesting because Hunter Yurachek has always supported Sam Pittman. That's his guy. That was his diamond in the rough hire. He wants to make that work. But the problem is if you go 3-9, and if this season splinters, and if this second half of the schedule that looks a lot more favorable, if this is a locker room that's got one foot out the door and it's kind of shades of last year, then that's a problem. And that's an issue. And it's something where Hunter Yurachek is going to actually have to sit down and make that decision. But their offensive line's a train wreck. The timing of this with the new scheme with Dan-Enos that I was really high on coming into this year, it just has not worked out because of how bad they've been at the tackle position. So I am worried about Sam Pittman's future.
Yeah. And hope he'll survive. Ole Miss is interesting. They go from a zone blocking to a man. Jake Thornton, offensive line coach, last year they were second in the nation, I think, in rushing. He's now at Auburn trying to salvage that. They just need offensive linemen. Ole Miss is an interesting story. What's the best case scenario for them this year, in your opinion?
I think best case scenario is I think they still have a New Year's Six Bowl on the table. Um,
Yeah.
I was low on them coming into the year. I said the Ole Miss spectrum was going to be really wide all over the
Mhm.
place. And when I
Yeah.
came out with my crystal ball, Lane definitely quote tweeted it and was like rat poison or like no rat poison or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Lane and his emojis, you know how he gets with those.
Yeah.
But I had him beating LSU, which happened. I also had them losing to Vandy at home. And then I had them giving Georgia its best game of the regular season. So I had it
Mhm.
all over the place with Ole Miss. And I think week to week, we've kind of seen that so far. Even last week against Arkansas, a really favorable matchup. They struggled to put their foot on the gas offensively. And I think they're having to adjust for the first time of the Lane Kiffin era of not having a really superior offensive line. And that's changed the way that they go about things offensively with Quinshon Judkins. They've had to
Yeah.
get Ulysses Bentley a lot more involved. He looks great coming off of a pretty
Yes.
much a lost season last year, and that's good. But I still worry about Jackson Dart and his decision making against some of these better teams. LSU's defense, even though they're a better team, I don't think that defense is making you scared about much of anything.
No.
So to me, that's the big question: is what does he look like against Georgia? What's he going to look like even against A&M? I think that's going to be a tough matchup for them up front with where they could be at a disadvantage. So yeah, Ole Miss is one of those teams. Maybe 9 to 10 wins is their upside, but I still kind of think they're more of like an 8-4 type team this year.
All right. They're that Ulysses Bentley came from SMU, another portal guy, and Zach Evans had come from TCU, and they had a 1-2 punch. But you're right, the offensive line, it's been really slow to come along. Another question: Howard in Aiken, South Carolina. We don't take calls, we do all guests, but I'm starting to open this thing up, and these things come in, and then we put them up on sidelines. Clemson's what happens when a coach refuses to adapt. We have Davis Babb, the CEO of IPTE, on the show from time to time. They raise $35 to $40 million a year. They have to do that at Clemson because of the lack of funds that ACC put out. I don't think Clemson football, their fan base is too passionate, is going away. But what about them? 15, 16, 18, and 19, they're playing for the CFP championship. And the last few years, they hadn't been there, and people think the program's down. Kind of weird dichotomy there.
It's an adapt or die business.
Yeah.
It is. And this is what happens. If you don't adapt, you die. It's as simple as that. It's not an NIL issue either. They had the first NIL only facility of any program in college football. They are devoted to that side of it in terms of roster retention, in terms of being able to get high school players in those doors, even though Dabo's not going to come out and say that. It's a transfer portal, though. You cannot have a one-way street out with the transfer portal and expect to compete at that level. And you say, oh, well, what about Georgia? Yeah, Kirby Smart didn't have to rely on the transfer portal last year. He did the year before. They still have transfer guys this year that are making a big time impact. Go look at what Tyke Smith is doing for that team this year. Even Dom Lovett, who's played in the slot and has been kind of, a little bit lost in the shuffle so far, but is still a guy that they're expecting big things from. Ra Thomas, a guy from Mississippi State. You cannot have a one-way street out with the transfer portal and expect to compete at that level. It was different in the 2010s. You could do that. It didn't really matter. You could preach the Clemson way. You could get to a national championship. If you had the right guy at quarterback like they did with the surrounding talent and those guys that they used to have at receiver, you could do those things. But if Clemson isn't going to get those stud receivers, if they're not going to be able to go into the transfer portal and be able to address legitimate roster needs, I don't expect them to compete at that level. And I had them going to the playoff coming into this year and losing in the semifinal. They're not even at that level. And to me, that's why expectations have shifted. And if I'm a Clemson fan, I'm mad because I'm like, look, you could have built on this. You could have been in the transfer portal. And instead, because of morals and values, you decided that you didn't want to adapt and you didn't want to try and compete at a championship level because it made you uneasy. And that's a really tough thing to stomach as a fan base.
It is. And you think about Duke beating them 28-7 in that first game. 56 4- and 5-star players on that Clemson roster and 2 on the Duke. That goes back to Auburn, Minnesota. Gus was going to get butter going down there for a business trip is what he said. I looked at the roster before the game, Auburn to Minnesota in the Hall of Fame or Outback, whatever it was. Auburn had 62 players on the roster at that time, 4- or 5-star rated. Minnesota had 4, and they curb stomped Auburn in that game. Of course, those Big Ten teams, and being an Indiana alum, it's a big deal. A lot of them want to just get down there. It's warmer. It's nice. Tampa, Orlando. Who doesn't? But I'd like to see an SEC Big Ten regular season matchup. Let's get LSU up in Happy Valley in mid-November. Let's get Michigan at the Swamp in September for the 11 a.m. deep fryer game. I think you'd have a better idea of what football really is.
Well, we're going to see that in the expanded playoff. That's the beauty of it. I'm looking forward to that. I can't wait. I used to make an annual trip to Camp Randall Stadium, good old Madison, Wisconsin. And I would love the idea of having an SEC team up there in mid to late December and seeing what that's like. And a Georgia, Wisconsin first round game, or, even Texas playing up at Michigan or something in that time of year. Like that's fun. That's going to be good for this sport as it continues to try and get more national. I think that's the big purpose of this entire thing is it has become so regional. And I think that it is kind of turned off some fans because of the inevitability of the southeastern region of the country controlling the national championship picture. And I think that there will be excitement associated with that. As somebody that now lives in Orlando, that spent the majority of his life in the Midwest, I am looking forward to that. And I think it's going to bring on a new element of this sport that, in my opinion, has been greatly lacking. It's kind of the only sport that really lacks that. I mean, every other sport kind of has areas where they can address that, and you don't really have to have that lingering question. And so to see that in the expanded playoff for all the pitfalls of the expanded playoff, I do think that's going to be a positive.
Yeah. Connor, look, thank you so much for taking time to join us. We ran a little bit long. You were so good. You could go. I mean, I love the way you're prepared for all these teams. Saturday down south. Tell people how they can follow you. Keep up with all your great work, and have fun being a dad, man. The more of them you get, the easier it is to get up at 5 a.m. and go to work. Trust me, it just makes it. And there's nothing like an Irish Catholic family. You cannot beat them.
Appreciate that. Yeah, we do a lot of stuff's going on at our household this time of year. But I always tell people, you don't want to work in the afternoon. You want to be able to just kind of punch out the clock. You want to waste an afternoon just clicking around on stories. SaturdayDownSouth.com. I promise you will have no shortage of entertainment being able to read our content that is free. There's no paywall or anything like that. SaturdayDownSouth.com is the one-stop shop for any college football fan.
Well, look, man, it is a great weekend. It's a great time of the year. The most important thing you said today, though, is about adapt or die. You're right. If you don't, you're out of here, man. Have a great one. Look forward to your next visit, okay?
Yeah, appreciate it, man. You too.
You bet. All right, Frank Duffy on here with us right now. It's Connor O'Gara, Saturday Down South. Man, golly, who you a fan of?
Right here, baby. Hey, by the way, from one good Irishman to another, man, it's the top of the morning until you hear.
Yeah,
we got Connor and the Duffys coming in,
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, Browne with an E, which is me, 14 tribes of Galway. I don't see a lot of Browns with an E here in America, especially, but when you go to Galway Bay and Roundstone and Clifton out there on the West Coast, Browne with an E is everywhere. And it was LeBrun, and we came over with William the Conqueror. My world history professor at Auburn called him Billy the Kick-Ass. William the Conqueror in 1066. LeBrun became Browne. That's right.
That's
the Normans. Norman, right. Pete, Frank, Cliff. Hastings was a hell of a battle.
That's right. Battle of Hastings. By the way, when Ron and I went over there, we've been over about 4 or 5 times. We got married in Kilkenny, actually. Ron and I, that's where we actually got married at St. Canice's Cathedral in Ireland. And when we went, of course, Duffy is the 7th most common surname in Gaelic. It's actually in Gaelic, it's translates into black face, Duffy. But yes, a lot of Browns over on the west side. In fact, my opinion, that's the prettiest side of Ireland. I love going over there. The Cliffs of Moher, the Giants Causeway, that West Coast, that raw West Coast is incredible.
Yeah.
In fact, Rhonda and I came very close to buying a piece of property over there on one of our trips. And unfortunately, I left it in Microsoft stock, which plummeted right around 2000. Unfortunately, I wish I would have taken it out and bought my little Irish property. Again, one of the many stupid, investments over the years that you made.
Oh, we've never made mistakes.
You always remember the bad ones, brother. You always remember the bad ones. But yeah, so being of Irish descent, love all this talk about Ireland. And again, Connor's a great guy. And he was talking about Wisconsin up at Camp Randall, bringing an SDC team up there. Don't forget that Les Miles and the I think it was the 2017 version of the Tigers went up to play at Lambeau Field. I mean, we wasn't in Camp Randall, but we were there and played Wisconsin on the road. In fact, just another boneheaded decision by Les Miles late, and a bad pick putting it in the air when we should have cost us that game. So, but hey, we're here for the finale of the 32-year rivalry, bizarre fest that is LSU Auburn. What the series that has given us.
Yeah, hold that thought. I'm just looking at the clock. We need to take a quick break because I'm getting sad even thinking about it. I'm a sentimental guy. I love this rivalry, but it's going to keep going. I'm a 3-6 guy. I want 3-6. We're going to talk about that. We're going to take a quick break. Be right back. Frank Duffy, Doug Dean will be joining us in just a second. He's going into a phone booth to change into his cape. Mild-mannered reporter from Birmingham. He said traffic is horrendous. I'm shocked how many times I've gone over the 280 through Mountain Brook, hour and a half, 2 hours. They ought to have people out in the streets selling food. They can make a fortune. We'll be right back. Top of the morning to you with Mr. Duffy and Mr. Browne.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
All right, Rob Browne back here. Man, a lot of comments already coming in. And let me say something about Red River Ford Toyota. You are out and about 45 minutes from Memphis. Take I-40, get off at the Forest City exit, go north 15 minutes. You're on Highway 64 going back and forth like a lot of people do throughout the year on Highway 64 and Wynn, right by the Walmart. Take go south about a half a mile, Red River Ford Toyota on your right. Open Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Service department, 7 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. on Saturdays. 25 service bays, awesome people there. Rusty Howard, Greg Smith on the sales floor will direct you to different salesmen. There's great ones over there. Cecil, Nate, Brandon, Stacy, Randy, all of them are committed to making it the best buying experience that you've ever had. Ford, Red River Ford Toyota.com, and they deliver anywhere. Justin Wynn will be on Monday, the general manager, talking about what all they're doing. It's a great time. And also, it's harvest time, Frank. Used to be, got dark. Day was over. Not anymore. Got lights on those tractors and combines and spray rigs. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, not unusual. These people will sleep in the cockpit. They've got VCRs. They've got radios. But they work a lot of 16, 18-hour days. ECS House Industries, proud to have them as a sponsor. The Better Roller, the pulverizer. You know what they also do? They make the aerators on the catfish farms that you see. If you like catfish, now they make those aerators that pump that water out all over the place. ECS House Industries, 99,000 square foot warehouse in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, right in the heart of the Delta, about 14 miles north of Wynn, Arkansas. Chad House, proud to know him. He's my friend, great supporter of this show. And when you were out there and you see these farmers working and all, think about ECS House Industries. Frank, let's get talking about this rivalry, man. I remember 88 and 89, the earthquake game 7-6. I was there. 1989, I was a young reporter having to work on Saturdays in Columbus, 35 minutes away. I didn't get to go, but my parents did, and it was in the rain. And I think it was a real close game. And then in 92, remember Scott Etheridge, the field goal kicker for Auburn, won it 30-28. And Pat Dye said, He's a little guy.
That was a booming kick. I can still hear the thud.
Yeah, Coach Dye said he's kind of effeminate looking. Remember that quote?
Kind of did,
yeah. But
I tell you what,
I think
his right leg wasn't that.
No.
That was a tough game to lose. I got to tell you, that was a tough game to lose, and we didn't think that was going to be the toughest until we came back again and threw the 3 interceptions for touchdowns. Look, this series is the only series that I'm aware of that LSU's in that has so many names for it: the barn burner, the comeback, the no flag. The earthquake game. I mean, it is just one thing after another. Thinking of Les Miles' last game when we thought we won the game and it got overturned. There is just one game after another are just so memorable in the pantheon of this rivalry. And look, I expect the exact same 2 nights from now in Tiger Stadium. I'm here at my daughter's townhouse here in Baton Rouge. We rolled in with Bengal 1 yesterday. I'm getting ready to head to New Orleans today. I'm going to be having lunch with Doug Dean and Chris Saxon and his beautiful better half, and at Galatoire's tomorrow for lunch in New Orleans. And then they're going to have dinner at Couchon, a wonderful restaurant in New Orleans. But I, being the good host that I am, is going to be running back to Baton Rouge to start my seafood gumbo, which, by the way, in exactly 9 minutes from now, I got to get the hell out of here to get over to Tony's Seafood to get my claw crab meat, my oysters, and my shrimp before I head to New Orleans. This is a wonderful rivalry that I'm going to hate to see be put on pause, but we know it's going to be regenerated. It's not going away. It's going to hibernate for a little bit, but I expect the finale to be as crazy as it's ever been. And with the fact that our offense is running like a juggernaut, but our defense is running like a jalopy. And y'all's defense is very opportunistic. 10 turnovers in the last 5 games when I think y'all only had 8 or 9 all of last year. So you're gonna see strength against strength on both sides. And that's what I think is just going to be fascinating about tomorrow. I think the key is LSU's got to get turnovers and keep from turnovers happening. And what Auburn has to do, y'all have got to be able to throw the ball downfield. You have not been stretching the field. And if you don't stretch the field, LSU's defense, which got a little bit better last week, the front 7 is now our strength. We're having problems at cornerback. If Auburn doesn't stretch the field, that allows LSU's front 7 to get up on the line, and that could make a long day for the Auburn Tigers.
Doug, jump in here. I know Frank's only got a few minutes before he's got to go to the Seafood Emporium. I'm getting hungry listening to this.
Yeah. All right, Duff, I can't lose with this trip to NOLA and Red Stick because I'll get to come hang out with the great Frank Duffy. But I'm telling you, I like your take. I'm going against chalk, all the chalk that I read this week, and I understand it because of how unbelievably JD5 is playing for y'all and those receivers. At the same time, man, my LSU buddies that really have high IQ, high football IQ like you, have a degree of worry about this one. And I think it mostly derives from, not that Auburn is clearly an even match, but it's the danger of having played 7 straight games, kind of physical, emotional games, some of them. And Auburn's been sitting there last week, resting up, changing plans. That's one of those wild cards. I tend to just not touch a game when you've got that dynamic at work. And I also think in some ways, at least pass defense, Auburn's pass defense is 15th in pass D efficiency. Obviously, you better be that good when you go up against this juggernaut. You know, the numbers, Frank, are matching 2019.
Yeah, we're only yards per game. I think we're only about 35 yards behind what Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Terrace Marshall and Justin Jefferson did. It's crazy.
It's ridiculous, and I'm with you. It would be a disservice to this weird, wacky, exciting rivalry if something weird and wacky doesn't happen tomorrow night. I mean, what I don't know, I was thinking and this is sort of a left-handed compliment to my LSU friends I look forward to hanging out with, and I hope they get the memo, Frank, that Dean is off limits. I am not to be attacked.
Hey, man, I got you covered, brother.
Yeah, and I'm not worried. I've never had trouble. I mean, every fan base has a few nut jobs, but I will not. I promise I will not be bringing a NCAA official whistle into the stadium with me like you guys.
Hey, they're already out there. They've already been.
Hey, I think it was one of the most clever things I've seen a fan do that affected an outcome a little bit. But I'm telling you, this one's going to be wild and wacky. The thing I look for from Auburn is with a week to prepare. I think Hugh Freeze knows we may not win this game, but we have got to use, if you're going to try to win games that down the stretch here like Ole Miss, much less in Alabama, even in our house, you have got to be balanced. And I think he's like, I expect him to surprise some people. And instead of going to our strength, run heavy like we had to do against Georgia, we've had a week to figure some things out offensively. I refuse to believe that Peyton Thorne, who threw for 6,000 yards at Sparty, is as bad as he's looked. Now, he's not a good – he's certainly not a great quarterback. But in that Georgia game, there were 4 or 5 balls that his receivers just didn't help him out that, potentially changed that game. Look for Auburn if it goes like I expect. And, frankly, if you want your offense to get well, play LSU's defense.
Yep.
If you want your defense to get well, play Auburn's offense, right? Something's got to give, Frank.
That's what I'm saying. It's going to be lopsided on both sides of the ball when either team is out there. And I think the key to Auburn is if y'all can get – so because you have not done it yet. You have not stretched the field on passes. Auburn has been within 10 yards. I think it's critically important for y'all to stretch the field because if not, the one thing we did figure out last week against Missouri and played much better doing, which we did not do at Ole Miss. I was sitting in Vaught Hemingway. That was a train wreck. Our defense, that was historically bad. And it was historically bad actually the week before against Arkansas, 2 weeks in a row. But we got a little better last week only because our front seven started to plug the line. And look, you got to give Pete Jenkins Pete's got to be 100 years old. They brought him back. Made a big difference in our defensive line. So if Auburn goes to what they've been doing, the run 67% of the time, pass 33%, and when the 33% of the time is not stretching the field, that's going to really deserve them. However, on the offensive side, you got to remember Auburn has played two. Yes, you're 0-2, but you played 2 very good teams, and you held Georgia to 27 points. Right. So look, let's think back of 2019. You had an LSU team that was firing on all cylinders. Toughest game that year for us was when Auburn came in. Right. Within the balance. So I think you're going to see a lot of that. And as far as the intangibles, and by the way, our special teams, I think, are very evenly matched. So I don't see an advantage for one over the other. But I think you're going to see the capper to this stretch of 32 years of rivalry. You're going to see the capper on this be as wild and weird and as wacky as we've seen in all the others, because not to have that would do it an injustice. So
and Frank, I'll tell you, I hope I have become a fan. It is not safe for work. A huge fan of T-Bob Hebert. He is a complete wild man. And women and children, cover your ears. But I hope I bump into him. I'm going to shake his hand and say, man, you deliver entertainment. But there's one game that puzzles me. I don't know how in Tiger Stadium LSU was held to 34 against Arkansas. Were there turnovers?
Well, the problem was we were having some drops. We had a very late start. We really didn't get rolling until late in the second quarter.
Yeah.
Then the floodgates opened.
Okay.
And look, right now, look, Joe Burrow will always be the GOAT at LSU for what he did and how he did it, and beating Alabama in the process, and the 15-0 and the greatest season of college football history. I'll fist fight anybody in the street that wants to say it's Alabama or Georgia. I'll fist fight him in the street. But having said that, I don't think there's ever been a more dynamic quarterback at LSU than what we were witnessing with Jaden Daniels. And look, I saw that hit he got in the end zone. I watched it. I didn't go to Columbia. I stayed at home and watched it up in the North Georgia mountains. And when I tell you he got hit in that end zone, I thought it was late. Could have been a flag. But if he didn't have cracked ribs, but I tell you what, it sure looked like he was working with him. And what he did in that last quarter and a half, I've never seen out of an LSU quarterback as the dynamicness of it. He is definitely, in my opinion, on the Mount Rushmore of LSU quarterbacks, and it's amazing to be able to do that with your feet. And Logan Diggs, is now starting to assert himself as the lead back. So you're going to have a very formidable offense that Auburn's defense is going to have to stop. But I think what serves y'all is that you have been very good at turnovers under Hugh Freeze that you wasn't under Potato Boy and his defensive schemes. That I think could be the determining factor. If Auburn shortens a field or two, or doesn't stop like you and I were sitting in Jordan Hare last year, and we stopped y'all on that right before halftime on a play that should have never been called. Robbie Ashford was put in a bad situation by y'all's offensive, I won't call them brain trust, but the offensive sides. But
no brains.
If something like that happens, that flips the short field, takes the crowd out of it, that could be a determining factor in keeping this game close for one of those final finishes.
Well, it's going to be wild, Frank. I'm getting out of Birmingham super early, rolling into I'll park at Hotel Mazarin, and I think I've got walking distance where we're having lunch. So look for a great deal. I can't wait to see how you do tailgating, Baton Rouge style, and also I think that this game it's just an instinct. It's supposed to be a 48-41 or whatever game will be. You can decide it. I don't think LSU will cover, but that's just because I think the open date means a lot for this Auburn team.
Yeah.
With a little bit of confidence gotten from even in a loss with Georgia, and some answers throwing the ball. But I think this might shock everyone and not be quite as high scoring a game as we're looking for.
Just like 2019 was. I mean, we were expecting a big shootout in 2019. Bo Nix against Joe Burrow, and we wound up barely getting out of 10-7 for like 3 quarters.
Yep. And the reason I say that, I think Hugh Freeze knows that you don't like to play a style where you're, quote, shortening the game, but I think Freeze knows we're not built to get in a shootout like Ole Miss was. Not really. I'd be shocked if we were. So, that doesn't mean Auburn has to run the ball 70%. It means safer, short passes. Look for the little Brian Battie. That kid has been hard to deal with. And they'll get passes to him out of the backfield, and you can't account for him because he's so short. They don't see him behind the O-line. I'm just really excited to be part of it. It sucks that this series is getting put on the shelf for a while, but let's pack about 5 years worth of fun into one Saturday night.
Hey, normally we pack, from I can remember the last 14 seconds when Demetrius Byrd caught an ill-fated, play by Les Miles. I don't know what the hell he was thinking, scoring with 1 second left. Let me tell you, we don't need a whole, a game. We just need about 10 seconds. Barnes catch on fire, earthquake shake, all hell breaks loose.
Whistles are blown in the 95 game. And I still remember Patrick Nix just like, wait. I mean, they should have gone and grabbed that grease ball out of the stands by his hair and beat his ass on national TV. I mean, I still am mad. You can tell. I'm still mad about it.
Hey, Duff, do me a solid. Y'all are riding high. And by the way, you're actually in perfect position. I realize you got 2 losses, but if you take care of business, you're right where you want to be, at least to get the chance for a rematch with Georgia. But do me a solid. If Auburn were to get a lead, you've already gone into the convalescent home and brought Pete Jenkins back. And we Auburn people that know Pete really like him. I think it's bad.
I'm not bringing Lynn Amity back to be the offensive coordinator. No, we would not be throwing with a 21-point lead.
Carly Hallman.
Quit stealing my thunder, damn it. I want Curly Hallman calling the plays late game.
But that's just it. It wasn't Curly Hall. It was Lynn Amity, who's actually a Tulane grad. He was an all, like a all play. I can't remember what conference Tulane was in at the time when they came out of the SEC. But he was like an all conference quarterback for Tulane back then. I was like, I thought he was a fifth columnist, keep throwing those damn passes, as LSU's offensive coordinator. No, Curly was just sitting there with those big earphones on. I think they were pumping in Barney or something.
Yeah, well. And Curly would be the first to say coaches can always overrule a play call.
Yes. Yeah. Well, let me tell you something. I don't know if they were overruling it in that 3 interception return game in the fourth quarter, but I was having a conniption fit. I thought they were going to have to send up the gendarmes and put a net over me, man. I was hollering. In fact, Billy Roberts, our good friend, was sitting right next to me, and he joked after the game. He goes, "At one moment, I thought your temporal lobe was going to blow." he goes. If they'd have thrown one more pass, he goes, "I think you wouldn't have made it."
That's funny. Can't wait to see you, Duff.
You too, buddy. Hey, look, I'm looking forward to tomorrow for lunch. I'm going to go get in line at 11:30. Hopefully, get us a place in the main dining room. Chris Saxon, and I don't know if Ron is going to make it. I'm trying to get her to come with us. And then I'll be back here making my seafood gumbo, which is the best thing that I make. And on Saturday, we'll sit around, have a couple of cold road sodas, some bourbons, have some good gumbo. In fact, we're lucky. We got gumbo weather. Yep, we'll have weather in probably like the mid 60s by the time we walk over to the stadium, and then it'll be in the high 50s at the end of the game, which is perfect for a gumbo. Great time.
All right, just this once, go Tigers.
Go Tigers, baby. Both of them. All right, see you guys.
Tigers win, Frank. Tigers win. All right, be careful, Frank. I'll talk to you later today. Doug, didn't mean to steal. I was just saying about I was at that 94 game, and you know what was crazy? My friend Mark Green, who died back in March of 2010, one of my best friends, biggest Auburn blogger. He's kind of the original blogger with Mark Murphy inside the Auburn Tigers. And early during that week, he said Auburn's already behind 10-0 in that game. I go, what do you mean? He goes, it's because nobody's giving LSU any credit. That's going to be a tough one to win. And I still remember, I think Auburn's total stats for the game were 167 yards of offense. But you know what I heard every time I would go to get a drink or go to the bathroom? People out there in the, in the stadium, put in Damian Craig, put in a few plays. And it was like, no, he isn't ready. That was maybe the strangest game I've ever been to.
And as bad as 94 is a fun year. We didn't win anything of importance, but Pete, you'll remember, fans that really follow Auburn or any team will remember. But as bad as Patrick Nix and that offense looked against that LSU defense, and give LSU credit defensively, it was only 3 weeks later they walk into the swamp and knock off number 1 ranked Florida.
Well, look over my shoulder. You see the catch? That's my dad's painting. That game, what was your mindset going into that game? I'll tell you what mine was, but I want to hear yours first.
You talking about the Florida game?
Yeah, in 94.
I will say, because we had exploded offensively in Starkville, if you remember, I thought we would give Florida a game. But my goodness, I thought the revenge factor. Remember 93, we knocked off.
Yeah.
I was sitting in the south end zone with my late father with a light drizzle coming down. And
yes, I was there.
That effeminate kicker, Scott Etheridge, he wasn't effeminate on that
No,
kick.
he wasn't. Why he said that?
I mean, thanks, Coach, after I just won a game. But I have a feeling he had a nice evening at the War Eagle Supper Club, Scott Etheridge, and he's going to have a phenomenal career in accounting, sports related accounting. Anyway, I thought the revenge factor was going to be a lot to try to overcome with Spurrier, but Terry Bowden, my God, there's a lot not to like about Bowden's tenure at Auburn, but he was one hell of a play caller in game, and that was use of the tight end, showing a lot of power, reverses. Asking Patrick Nix to take some deep shots, and almost all of which came up big. But then the big thing is if I remember, that we've managed to force 3 or 4 interceptions on Florida, and
Yeah.
you could if Spurrier throws his visor down 3 or 4 times, you probably are going to beat Florida.
Yeah. I mean, because Terry Dean out of Naples, Florida, was the starter, and then Warfel, and they moved him around. But I remember my mindset going into that game. I said, Auburn said this is going to be the biggest thing. This is going to be like if Pickett had busted through the lines on the charge. And I said, nobody is giving Auburn a chance. I said, but they're going to win this game. I remember, I was like, I envisioned it. But the coolest thing about it was Andy Fuller, the tight end out of Huntsville. 7 catches, 123 yards. No one saw that one coming. And you're right about the play calling. And then
Rob,
the catch there at the end.
Let me interject. Long forgotten, but it was a big deal. Stephen Davis was just gouging them on runs.
Yes.
When you do that and you start getting them on their heels and they don't know whether to expect run or pass, and formations were clever, defense played lights out. That was one of the more unlikely upsets. And after that game, I thought, man, Terry Bowden was hired to be a 1-year interim guy, and he's going to have a 15-year brilliant tenure at Auburn. He's going to be like the new Bobby Bowden. And unfortunately, the space between the ears got him, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And he did stabilize, and I'll never, you can't thank him enough. 93 and 94, Auburn could have slipped into the abyss of hell with the probation and all, and they didn't. And that first 5 years, I think he was the 7th winningest coach in college football. And then 98 happened, and then that gave us Tommy Tuberville, if you're an Auburn fan.
Yeah, Rob, going back to, and I don't want to be unfair to Frank. He's not here to defend his Tigers, but the way he played since, especially last Saturday, that game could have gone either way. And the 10-point, it was hilarious. T-Bob was raving about it. The covering the 6.5-point spread was never in doubt. Well, it was until under a minute when they got a pick six. Good for LSU, but I think it's shocking to even utter these words, Rob, that LSU's fairly young defense, it used to be deep defensive back DBU at LSU. They've allowed 283 passing yards per game. And, they may completely find themselves this Saturday night, because we're by no means bringing a well-oiled aerial attack into Death Valley. But I do think Hugh Freeze and Montgomery, they've got to not ignore that and say, well, our identity is a running team. It's still going to be heavy running, but I think you've got to capitalize on what they've been unconfident at, which is trying to defend the pass. So I think that adds up to like not a 50-50 ratio, but about 60 run, 40 pass. And those 40% passes, I think they've honed it down to what do we believe in, who gives us the best chance to actually catch a 50-50 ball. And there's less is more. In other words, we're going to do fewer plays, and they've practiced the living hell out of them for 2 weeks. Hugh said that in his presser. So I just think that this is the game Auburn's offense. It shows a pulse throwing the ball 150-plus yards through the air, which will feel like 400 for Auburn.
Well, looking at it in my other job as a financial advisor, I'm looking at a trend. This is a breakout opportunity. Everybody can't be right at the same time.
Yeah.
You might want to call it a dead cat bounce. That's a market term you hear used a lot, but there's no way. And as smart as you are and high as your football IQ is and your regular IQ, we all have a bunch of IQs, but Peyton Thorne was too successful before he got to Auburn. At some point, mentally, he's going to adapt to the speed off the edge and figure out how to do it. But he's the son of a coach.
Yeah.
And I like that. And I like his chances Saturday night to have his best game ever at Auburn.
When you're trying to, most coaches are pretty skilled at and very clear with their staff and players about not leaking information. So we're want to try to get a handle on intangibles in these games. You're left to try to look for little bitty tells or signals. And I got one in Hugh Freeze's presser. I don't know if you caught it, Rob, but there was a reporter Monday that asked him about, are you still thinking about starting or playing Robbie Ashford more? And Hugh Freeze rankled at that. He did not like that question. And the way he answered it was, in essence, saying, Peyton, it's not that we're not going to get Robbie on the field. He's that electric. But Peyton Thorne is my guy. We believe in this kid. And I think that's smart because I just don't see Robbie as equipped yet, at least, and he's running out of time, to run the complete offense with RPOs. And I think Peyton Thorne, if he can calm down and they can give him throws that both his receivers and he feel confident in, they're not overly complicated, and you've had 2 weeks to polish the execution, I think his confidence in Thorne going into this game could transmit. And when my head coach believes in me, that can only help your own confidence. I don't care if we are playing in Death Valley. So you put a gun to my head, I'm going to pick LSU to win because of the night LSU crowd and because of JD5. He should be in New York City for the Heisman ceremony along with Georgia. If you ask me, Caleb Williams might win it again, but those three should be in New York City. I think because of that, LSU wins, but I think Auburn makes it a single-digit spread and has a chance down the stretch in the fourth quarter.
Well, I think that's the smartest thing you said, was to observe and to expand on Hugh Freeze saying, Peyton Thorne is my guy. You've got to do that at some point, because if you are constantly looking over your shoulder and worrying, you're not going to do that well. You've got to give people confidence. The best employers give you freedom. If you're an architecture firm, I know young architects have said, Browne, your old man's the greatest guy I've ever worked for. He paid us on time. He gave us autonomy, and he was always there to listen. And he did fall asleep a lot. He's a narcoleptic, but he's a great listener. But, Doug, that's the take right there. Yeah, if you put a 50 cal to my head, I'm taking LSU to win.
Yeah, they're good.
But, sometimes people miss. I like your take on Peyton Thorne. It's the smartest take I've heard anybody say. It's nothing against Robbie Ashford. It's just, you're my guy. And I think that vote, I'm not going to use that term vote of confidence. I just think that's going to pay off big time.
And odd, I know he ended up playing a miserable second half, but it's hard to even, isn't it, that only a year ago, Robbie Ashford lit up LSU for 338 yards through this series, and I'll get out of the way for you guys, but Auburn has covered the spread. I know this isn't a bookmaking show, but it's illustrative.
We always talk about the lines. Don't worry.
Yeah, illustrative of the rivalry, and that people start getting carried away calling for blowouts. There have been some blowouts, but you typically seen them coming. But Auburn has covered the last 4 meetings. And in this series, the underdog is 7-0 against the spread. Not straight up, but against the spread. The visitor is 8-1. This is shocking. The visitor is 8-1 against the spread in Auburn LSU. And finally, 13. This is when you call a rivalry. Until last year, Alabama Tennessee was not a rivalry. I call it that. It is now. The 13 of the last 19 meetings, Auburn and LSU, have been decided by single digits. Is there any reason to think? Well, there is reason to think it'll be double digit this time if you only look at LSU's offense. But if you're not careful, you're overlooking that Auburn played outstanding for the most part. We hold Georgia to 27, A&M to 27 on the road. So I think you get a close game tomorrow night. I look forward to being there with the bourbon wafting through the air in Death Valley.
I think it's going to be a great one. And just, here's another game no one's talking about. The worst Auburn football team in 62 years from 1950, because Dad was at Auburn when Wofford beat Auburn. He goes, boy, I saw it. It was bad. 2012, remember LSU came to Auburn? Nobody gave Auburn a chance. 12-10. That was at Jordan-Hare. This is at Tiger Stadium. But I will say this, Doug. You've juggled more stuff in my brain, and the synapses are firing after what you said on those numbers. And we always love numbers and analytics, whatever you want to call them. But the way you weave them in and put them in the vernacular, it gives Auburn fans hope. And if I can somehow find a way to get to Baton Rouge, I will be there. But a sponsor I've been working on for 6 months called and said, "Hey, we're going to be in Memphis for a wedding this weekend. Are you available?" So now I'm kind of like, yes, I am.
Take care of your sponsor. Pay the bills. I'll what it was like in Death Valley.
Send me some Polaroids, okay?
There you go. I got to cut out, brother.
All right. Hey, thanks so much, Doug. Appreciate it.
All right. There you go.
All right. Let's bring didn't mean to do that. Add to the stage Matt Dean, the Oregon Ducks. They absolutely and Camp was going to be on with us right now. She's up in Knoxville visiting her son, who's in his freshman year at Tennessee. She's going to the Tennessee-Texas A&M game. She's going to be on the show with us tomorrow for a few minutes talking about Rumble Boxing Gym. And I want to say this real quick. Rumble Boxing Gym, located 1835 Union Avenue, Midtown Memphis. I don't care where you live. You need to be working out there. Great workouts. Open up 5 o'clock in the morning. 48 people in those classes. Elite instructors. All the gear you need, you can buy. Check them out on the website, sidelines.live, rumbleboxinggym.com. Absolutely, star jacks, burpees, planks, push-ups, dips, dumbbells. Then you hit the bags. Think about it. 15 3-minute rounds, 45 minutes. Matt here was a prize fighter. 45 minutes. Can you imagine being a big heavyweight going 45 minutes in a fight? But those workouts in there, 45 minutes, you will walk out of there feeling like you just knocked out a couple of miles in the pool. Absolutely awesome workout. rumbleboxinggym.com. Proud to be associated with Ann Camp Lee, and she's got visions to open up 3 of these gyms in the Memphis market. Matt, beware of Charlie Brown's teacher. Remember that on Charlie Brown? She hangs out in Baton Rouge. I'm confused there, Shoney. Charlie Brown's teacher, she hangs out in Baton Rouge. Isn't she everywhere where there's a school? Hell. How you doing this morning? It's college football season going into week 7. You surprised about anything up to this point?
Good morning, Rob. Last weekend, it was interesting. I had not watched Missouri play a lot of football. And just because my schedule, we were away with football, so I was not in the office last weekend, or I should say on the field. I thought Missouri was really talented offensively, Rob. I mean, yeah. I think it's maybe Luther Burden III. I'm not sure. I don't want to mispronounce his name or anything, but their wide receivers were talented. They had LSU on the ropes. And then LSU does what LSU does. They found a way to get it going. They had a late pick 6 to seal the deal. The defense, they gave up 25 in the first half. And I'm gonna circle back to the Auburn game here in a second. But the second half, they got some stops when they needed to. The offense made some plays. They took the lead. Missouri came back and took the lead. And then the second time LSU took the lead, they held on. I just think the West is really intriguing. I don't see a path where Georgia doesn't win the East. I know some people will say differently. They still have to, I think, play at UT Knoxville. I get that. But in the West, man, I mean, it's intriguing because how can you not say that Auburn has been the one team that went toe-to-toe with Georgia like no other? I mean, yeah. You saw what Georgia did at Kentucky last week, and we were pretty impressed. Kentucky was undefeated at the time. And by the way, I just saw what Texas Tom says. I disagree. I think the Vols are going to hammer them. But anyway, I just saw that, so I had to comment. I know. I have other reasons why I'm probably a little biased.
No, I know, but it's funny. I mean, These things come in, and I just translate them and put them up on the screen.
But I'm merely the messenger. Getting back to Auburn and LSU, I like Auburn's chances to keep it close, but I just think offensively, man, you got to score to beat LSU. You got to score. And on the road, that's a little different challenge, especially. Is it a night game?
It is a 6 p.m. Central game on the color TV.
I've been down there for a couple of those, Rob. My God.
I know.
It's going to be electric down there. You know that.
Yeah. Well, and that's what we love.
Stay here for your sponsor, by the way, too. I think that's the smart thing to do. I'll be working, till the halftime of the Oregon game. We have a big game, Road Swanee football here Saturday.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try to get home to watch the second half of Oregon, Washington, which that's where game day is going to be, a big game. My son is really excited. Oregon has a huge task. Washington, one of the best offenses in the country. Michael Penix is playing at a Heisman level. That's a really tough task for Oregon on Saturday. But here's the thing. If Oregon, regardless of the outcome, if they can split with them in Utah on the road, beat USC at home, they still have a path to the Pac-12 championship game and a rematch to pay still an outside shot at the Final Four. They if they don't win, they can't get beat badly, and they can't let it hang over. Right? That's kind of what my message has been. But I wouldn't be shocked if Oregon went up there and stole one. I wouldn't. It's a big time. It's a rivalry game. It's a lot of people don't realize it, but it's their Oregon Washington is their version of Oklahoma Texas.
Auburn Georgia.
That's right. That's their version.
Ole Miss LSU.
That's right. I mean, it's their version of it.
Arkansas LSU.
By the way, I'm a little worried
Missouri Kansas. Kansas.
I'm worried about Arkansas, Rob, because I am too. I love Sam Pittman to death. I fell in love with him after a few post-game locker room things early on in his tenure, and it's really a cruel business. They've had some unfortunate things with some recruits and also just some injuries. But I thought they were in position last week in the fourth quarter to win that game on the road and steal one. And Ole Miss is pretty good, man. Ole Miss is pretty good.
Yeah, they are, and they're
quietly. The West is wild. The West is wild. Yeah. I'm telling you.
Yeah, they're quietly 5-1. Yeah, and I think the last time they beat Georgia between the hedges in Athens was in '96.
Really?
And my friend Brock Kreitz, linebacker, started 95, 6, and 7 for the Ole Miss Rebels from Naperville, Illinois.
Right.
Same hometown as Peyton Thorne, Auburn's quarterback.
That's right.
And Brock and Walker Jones, Ole Miss had Georgia backed up at their own goal line. And the quarterback for Georgia, that Mike Bobo, threw it over the top to Hines Ward, who was uncovered. And Brock Kreitz and Walker Jones from Jackson, Mississippi, I think he went to Jackson Prep, ran him down about midfield. And Tommy Tuberville said, when he used to be on this show every week before becoming a senator, and then he got real busy. He said, I'm going to devote an entire chapter in my book to that one play. He said, we had 46 scholarship players on the roster when we went on the road to Athens. I think the rule is you can only take 66, but, they'd been in probation and all kind of stuff. Yeah. But Rebels quietly, just grinding along, Texas Tom, I was thinking the front seven for A&M would give Tennessee a hard time. But, again, it's not a good matchup. Connor O'Gara, Saturday Down South, was on in the first segment. Love him. Great Irish Catholic. He's got a 4-month-old baby, so he's kind of busy. Covers all these games. He said it's not a good matchup because when's the last time A&M went on the road and won or did anything? They played Alabama close last year. It's year 6 for Jimbo. Next year is here. Gig 'em, Aggies. I know a lot of A&M fans. I mean, they're frustrated. They're pulling their hair out. Doesn't make any sense. All right, let's do this. Let's take a quick break. John Hartwell is supposed to be joining us right now. He should be here with us momentarily, but we're going to take a quick break and be right back. We got Matt Dean over at Rhodes College in Memphis, the most beautiful inner city campus in these here United States of America. Absolutely gorgeous. They have their own rock quarry in Arkansas. Not sure where it is, but the building code there the Paul Barrett Library, the Swim Center, the Bryan Center. It's a who's who of people that love Memphis and they love Rhodes. We'll be right back.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am R.A. Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
Hi, Matt Dean. You're talking about that Washington, Oregon game up in Seattle. That's Lake Washington. It's not the Puget Sound. Have you ever been to Husky Stadium?
I have not.
It's it's gorgeous.
That's what I heard.
And that's a hell of a program. I mean, Don James, former Marine, who was the football coach at Kent State when Nick Saban and Gary Pinkel were teammates there back in 73. He was a United States Marine, led Washington to a lot of success. That's a hell of a brand there in the SeaTac, Seattle, Tacoma, Fort Lewis, McCord's out there. It's gorgeous, and it's a great school. Oregon gets the win this weekend. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it. I'm calling it. Okay. Michael Penix Jr. is really good, but the more I learn about Dan Lanning from people that know him, what he was doing in Alabama, Dan Lanning, Glenn Schumann, Kirby Smart. And I will say this. I agree with what, Johnny Ballpark Frank said on the show. He's an FSU alum from Huntsville. Great guest on our show. Great guy. Said that Jimbo Fisher's he's a Bowden guy. He was raised by the Bowdens. People say he's the Nick Saban. He was with him a few years. Just because someone drives by your house doesn't mean they know you. Right. But I do think Dan Lanning is building an SEC program at Oregon. You've got a much better view of it than I do, but I study this stuff. Autzen Stadium, was it close to 60,000?
Yeah.
That atmosphere in there, those people are as crazy as people in the South, aren't they?
Yeah, Rob. I've been there twice. I was there for UCLA last year. Yeah. When they beat UCLA at the time, UCLA was undefeated, and Oregon was 5-1 at the time. Their only loss was to a national champion Georgia team, where they got run out of the stadium. But then this year for Colorado, it's 35-0 at half, 42-0 late third quarter, and they take Bo Nix out of the game. They end up winning 42-6. They played half of their twos in the fourth quarter. I think they're very good, but I also think Washington's very good. I think the thing that's going to be intriguing, you mentioned Coach Lanning building an SEC program, And that really starts on the line of scrimmage, right? And especially the defensive front, because he's a defensive coordinator. Last year their defense was probably only top 75 in FBS. Currently, they're, I think, top 10, maybe 8th. I could be wrong with that number. And they have a top 10 offense. There's only 2 teams in America that have a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense right now. That's Georgia and Oregon. So Washington defense is better than last year, but they're still, if you look at the numbers, I think they're in the mid-50s. I could be wrong on that. So I think if the defense can get some stops and hold some 7s, make some 7s, turn into 3s, I think Oregon's got a really good shot. I like them too, but I think it's just it's going to be a really great environment to play in. I think it's an unbelievable opportunity. Coach Lanning, in his first 18 games as a head coach, is 15-3. He's won a bowl game, and his losses are to Georgia, the defending national champion, back-to-back, Washington by 1 possession last year, and Oregon State, where they lost a 17-point fourth quarter lead that denied them an opportunity to go to the Pac-12 championship game last year. So off to a great start. It would mean a lot to both programs. Tomorrow's game's huge.
Yeah, I mean, it's ginormous. Artemis Pyle in Jacksonville, Florida. You know who Artemis Pyle was? Member of Leonard Skinner. Give me 3 steps. Give me 3 steps to saving Miami Hurricane football. That's a good question. We talked with Connor O'Gara in the first section. That loss the other day ranks up there. Okay, you know what the Darwin Awards are, don't you? Just real dumbasses. One of the winners was a guy in Egypt. A chicken fell down a well that was about 50 feet deep, and he climbed down there to get the chicken, and 4 or 5 other people climbed down there, and all of them either were, died doing it or were severely injured. And guess what? The chicken just ended up flying out. I mean, just, okay. How do you lose a game like that to Georgia Tech? They said that Mario Cristobal really didn't have much to say after the game, but that's got to be the most frustrating. I reminded Connor that Jets game years ago when they had to just kneel and it's over, and they turned the ball over and lost. I think Herm Edwards was there.
No, it was the Giants. Joe Pisarek was the quarterback for the Giants. And that's the play that really created the kneel down, Rob, because he fumbled the handoff to the running back. Herm Edwards recovered it, and Philadelphia ran it in. He did for a touchdown. So we created the kneel down back probably 40-plus years ago because of a really bad fumble late in the game by a running back quarterback exchange. And now there's nothing he can say. I'm sure there was people in his ear saying, "Take a knee, coach." He's making millions of dollars a year, one of the highest paid coaches in the country, and he's a tremendous recruiter. But my gosh, Rob, that just cannot categorically happen.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, and I'm thinking about Florida at Utah. Thursday, August 31st. You had 2 number 3s on the field at the same time.
Yeah.
How do you let that? The inexcusable. I mean, people, hey, is the safety on? Yes. Are you sure?
Now, that play was in the first quarter, and honestly, it ended up costing Florida, but I mean, in my mind, Rob, it's no comparison. This is just textbook. Hey, clock management. Let's take a knee, run it down to X. If there's a few seconds left and we don't want to punt, look what Alabama did. They made a bonehead play when Milroe threw that ball out, when they really just had to kneel 3 times. And so they had 7 seconds left on 4th down. What did Milroe do? He ran back there a little bit, threw a deep pass. By the time it went out of bounds, the game was over. Okay?
Yeah.
The risk you run when people are just going to try to strip or punch the ball out of there, it's too much of a chance. And I feel I don't have a lot of friends that are Miami fans, but I really felt bad for their fan base. They had a chance to go 5-0.
Yeah, they did. Billy in Cartersville, Georgia. I'll bet Dabo is out at Clemson within the next 24 months. He's lost his drive. Well, again, we talked with Connor O'Gara Saturday Down South in the first segment about that. It's not that he's lost his drive. Connor was right. We all would agree. Adapt or die. Doesn't like the portal, doesn't like all this. I'm not a fan of the portal either, but you got to do it.
Right.
You've got to look. I would rather shoot ducks with lead, but the law says you got to shoot them with steel. So what happens is everybody comes out and tries to make ammo as close to lead as possible, but you still got to shoot. You can't shoot lead. You got to adapt. Clemson has a lot of money, a very passionate fan base. What's your gut feeling on that prediction by Billy in Cartersville, Georgia, which is where Ronnie Browne, Auburn Tiger, number 2 pick in the draft, is from? And also, you know who else is from Cartersville, Georgia? Trevor Lawrence, great quarterback from Clemson, plays for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Dabo's had a lot of success, brought them national championships. I just think you're 100% spot on, Rob. I think Dabo has not liked the portal, hasn't utilized the portal, hasn't worked the portal. And, you look this year, lost a really tough game. Duke just beat him. Duke just smacked him in the mouth. Duke had Notre Dame beat late too before they kind of took a step back defensively, even though Duke's had a really good year. So I don't know if he's lost his drive. I just think his plan has been altered, don't you? I mean, it's like
a
lot of coaches, if you get them in a room, they are worn out because they don't know how to attack the portal. And you got to work really, really hard. And if you don't have a really good player personnel staff that's there with you doing some of those things, and I think that's what happened at A&M. I mean, they ran out their whole personnel staff and thought, well, we'll just do it on our own. And, good for them. But coaching matters. And, there's a lot of people that were not happy Saturday night with some of the decisions Jimbo made in the fourth quarter on whether or not to punt the ball and get the ball first and goal at the 2 after Aniyah Smith made a big-time play, and you got to settle for a field goal? Really? I mean, come on, man. I thought that's why you brought Petrino in.
Yeah.
But Alabama, defensively, second half, Rob, they were lights out on Saturday. They got to the quarterback. They really did a good job with their front four. And, I think one of the better games this weekend coming up will be how A&M responds on the road. But I think there's a stat, Rob, since you talked about earlier, A&M hadn't won a road game in the SEC, I believe, since they beat Missouri in 21 in the COVID year.
20.
Well, actually,
that was 20. Or 20 was the worst year of the 20% crowd.
I mean, 2020, whatever that was.
Yeah.
Because I know we were remote the fall of 2020, but the SEC was playing. So that's the stat. The last time they beat a road opponent was against Missouri.
Yeah. Another one, Dash Riprock in Palm Springs, California. You never know who's going to be coming in on the web. Dash is becoming a regular. Pac-12 is the QB league. It really is.
He is.
Swan song, whatever you want to call it. But God almighty. What about Clemson? DJ Uiagalelei, DJ, the quarterback. Uiagalelei. Yeah, he couldn't I think he's from Concordia, California. He came as a 5-star to Clemson. We know what he did on the road when Trevor Lawrence was injured at Notre Dame. He threw for nearly 500 yards, the most yards ever by an opposing quarterback at South Bend. But he didn't get any traction as the full-time starter at Clemson. He's at Oregon State now.
Doing well.
Yeah, and that's civil war, man, between Oregon and Oregon State.
Plays? His 5-star brother, you know where his 5-star brother plays at? Trivia question. Yes,
Oregon?
sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Oregon. And
he was going to go to Clemson probably. But but not anymore.
Not anymore. He's a Duck.
Yeah, he's the Duck. Concordia, Pittsburgh, California, 38 million people in the Golden State. About, 400,000 or 500,000 have left here in the last few years, but they still They still know how to play football out there, play really good high school football out there in California. But great observation by Dash Riprock. Didn't he go out with Ellie Mae Clampett a lot on the Beverly Hillbillies? She always had these guys, Rip Torn, Dash Riprock, Bolt Upright. That was another one, Bolt Upright. Speaking of Bolt Upright, there's the man, Big John Hartwell, a 6'7" junior from UMS High School in Mobile, Alabama, for the Citadel with a little stopperino in downtown Lexington, KY. Oh, my God. And another one of Joe Dean's great ones. Y'all are both basketball savants. I mean, I tell you what, it is so much fun. As much as we love talking college football on here, we have probably more fun talking college basketball and college baseball, college. But I want to tell you one thing. The other one was Joe Dean. Vanderbilt used to have this little point guard, and he was the shooting guard. Remember Barry Goheen? And he would say, Barry Goheen, a little string music from downtown Nashville, Tennessee. You know what Joe Dean did before he was the athletic director at LSU? He was a shoe salesman for Converse, wasn't he? Could you imagine him coming to make a presentation? Everyone needs shoes. The Bible makes 36 references to Jesus wearing shoes. A man without shoes is a man with sore feet. How big an order do you want? I mean, my God, that guy was great. But I'm getting carried away. John, you being an athletic director is like a fireman. You never know when the call is going to come in. Glad you're with us, man. Matt's been, I'm going to tell you what, the two of y'all together, I love this stuff, but welcome to Sidelines.
No, I appreciate it. Sorry I was a little late joining today. Yeah, had to firefight for a little bit this morning, but all is good. Hey, you know what I was looking forward to hearing today, and I'm sure y'all have already talked about this. I was looking forward to Matt's inside scoop on Oregon and Washington this week. That's going to be a heck of a football game.
So, John, it's interesting. You know, my son's on Pacific time, so like a lot of times I'll go to bed between 11 and midnight, and I'll wake up and there's some random text from him because he may have gotten off work at 10, which is midnight, and I'm sleeping. You know that you were over in Utah State for a while. You know the transition. I think they're Mountain Time, though. I could be wrong on that, but anyway, he's like, Dad, I'm just really fired up, blessed. This is the biggest game I've been a part of in my young career. And you know, I was thinking, well, Ty, you know, you were on the staff when A&M went to the Orange Bowl, but you know, he's been more invested because he has weekly meetings with the defensive coordinator and the head coach, that kind of, you know, because his title's director of scouting, so they bring him in once a week. And I said, Tyler, just enjoy the moment, regardless of the outcome, man. It's been a great run so far, and there's still a lot of football to be played. Just, you know, I just hope they play well, you know, because Washington is really good. I think the thing, John, that I've been impressed with is I think Lanning's got such a great focus. Both teams are coming off a bye week, so I think it helps both teams in their focus for this game. And I think, you know, game day's going to be there. I think it'll be one of the better games of the year, but obviously I'm a little biased, but I think Oregon's got such a chance because of their improved defense to maybe do a better job on Michael Penix this year than last year. Michael Penix really was the reason Washington beat them in a close game last year at Eugene. He's been Michael Penix Jr. has been fantastic for him.
Yeah, I saw a stat last night that Bo Nix is completing over 80% of his passes, which leads the FBS. And then I guess that Michael Penix is averaging 399 yards a game, which also leads FBS. Incredible. So yeah, that's going to be quite a show. You know what? I think I've and it's not just to reiterate what you're saying there, Matt, but I think I've got to give the nod as well to Oregon in this game. And here's why I say that is Bo Nix, the maturity of Bo Nix. I mean, he, you know, and what he's done, you know, after, you know, obviously a storied career, a really well-known name in the lineage with Auburn football, and his ability to leave what he didn't deem was a good situation for him, right, and to flourish so well in Eugene. It's hard not to cheer for Bo Nix, and I think his maturity and his calmness in the pocket very likely could be the difference in that game.
I like it, John. I like it. I hope you're right. I do. I feel the same way. He has been just tremendous for that whole team, and he came back. He could have been probably a second-round pick last year. He came back to help the team win a Pac-12 championship.
Yeah, the strangest thing about it, Joe Burrow in 2018 at LSU, his first year there, averaged 54.6% completion. Joe Burrow the next year has Joe Brady as passing coordinator working on the staff with him. He goes up to 78%.
Wow.
I thought that was a figure that nobody would ever break. Bo Nix, if he can hold up to 80, I mean, that's got to be a record. Stretch Cunningham in Spring Hill, beautiful area of Mobile. Wasn't Stretch Cunningham Archie Bunker's friend down there at the pool hall? But that's another story. Sunbelt has been a P5 level conference for many years. John, I love it when y'all are on here because we get people out of their comfort zone. I mean, I love talking about college football, though, all over the country. But I do think the Sunbelt is getting after it. You've taken over a athletic program there at ULM that, there's a lot of work to do, but that's why they hired you. That's why people get out of bed in the morning. Nothing will wake you up in the morning and motivate you to go to work and not sleep in like having kids. I mean, kids make, an MBA can help you make money, but not as much as having 3 or 4 kids in the house. That'll wake you up in the morning. Arrgh. But let's talk about that Sunbelt overall, top to bottom. I love sports all over the country. Again, I say this every time. I'm an Auburn grad, but I know this. It's good for sports to be good. I want to beat you, but it's great for people because sports teach the lessons of life. Shout out to the late Eddie Robinson because he always said that.
Yeah, I mean, here's a perfect example, Rob. I don't know if you guys, and it was a heck of a football game, got to watch any Tuesday night of Coastal Carolina at Appalachian State. I think they had 33,000 people there, record crowd at App State. Mm-hmm. So Coastal Carolina kicks a field goal on the final play of the game to win that game. The irony of that, if you look at a 3-game stretch, a 3-week and a 2 or 3 days stretch for Appalachian State, they are on the road at Wyoming. They are leading that game 19-15, go down to kick a field goal to go up 22-15, get it blocked. It's returned for a touchdown by Wyoming. Wyoming wins the game, which, by the way, Wyoming is a really, really good football team.
They are.
They beat an undefeated Fresno State team last week. And again, how the transfer portal works for you. Andrew Peasley, the quarterback at Wyoming, was a quarterback for 2 years at Utah State. Know the kid well. He played a very small school in Eastern Oregon in high school. Just an unbelievable player. The only game, Wyoming is 5-1, either 5-1 or 6-1. The only game that Wyoming lost, Peasley was hurt, did not play. They lost at Texas late in the fourth quarter of the game. Yeah. So they're a really good football team. But they beat App State down the stretch of that game. The next week, and we talked about it here, it was heartbreak for our Warhawks. App State kicks a 54-yard field goal on the final play of the game to beat us 41-40. And then they turn around, this past Tuesday night and lose on the final play of the game. That parity in college football, that's what makes it such a great sport, because you can say there are slam dunks and sure things, but the parity in college football and the competitiveness is amazing. I watched some last night. Again, I'm a college football junkie. I'll watch it every night. I watched some of UTEP at FIU. UTEP was 1-5, had not won an FBS game. They go into FIU's coached by Mike McIntyre, a pretty good football team. They're getting better. And UTEP goes in there and wears them out. Had not won an FBS game since last year. I think their last win of an FBS game was against FIU last year. So there is a ton of parity in college football, and I think that's what makes it so great.
Yeah, Kelly Leak, I think Dash was a Flintstone movie star. Well, it's coming at me pretty hard. Said, and not to be confused with Chest Rockwell.
Man, where are you going to bring Walter Matthau out here pretty soon? I mean, this is awesome.
Grumpy old men. Remember that great quote in that movie? Put your lip over your head and swallow. That was one of the greatest movies of all time.
That was awesome.
But you know, I go back to what I love this guy. Let me go find him here. Bigfoot in Medford, Oregon. I always enjoy hearing Matt and John on Thursday's show. Can Oregon win the CFP in the last year of the Pac-12? And before we get to that, I'm with you, John. That game, Appalachian State, Jerry Moore had to have been there for about 20 years, built a great program up there. And the Southern Conference, Richmond Weaver, who's on the show a lot over in Greenville, South Carolina, the upstate, covers Clemson and the ACC. He's working on a documentary. And these things, you know, you always, I'll get it done. They're years in the making. It's called SoCon, 100 years of the Southern Conference, the Super Conference. And I'll just say this for all you people out here that wake up in the morning if it's raining and hit the snooze button or want to roll back. Go buy good gear. Get up. Get ahead of people. 100 years ago, the Southern Conference had 23 schools in it. 10 years later, the Southeastern Conference was founded. 20 years later, the ACC was founded. Guess what? There's still a Southern Conference. There's still an SEC. There's still an ACC. And I know it's kind of in vogue for a lot of people to say, the ACC sucks. Big Ten said, no, they don't. Just when you think that, Florida State, very likely, is going to win the national championship this year. Chief Osceola, Renegade, Tomahawk Chop. Just when you think, it's like football's like whack-a-mole. Be very careful. I love this discussion, but real quick, can Oregon win the CFP, Matt, John, y'all start? And I love that talking about Oregon and Washington. That's the number 7 and 8 teams in the country, and I'll bet it might rain sometime over the weekend out there in Seattle.
Yeah, I think the winner of this game, and that's why this game is so important, I think the winner of this game has a pretty clear path. I mean, again, there's still a lot of football left to play in the regular season, but has a pretty clear path to getting to the CFP playoffs. Hey, I got to say this, Rob. I'd love you to make that statement when Ben Troop is back on here in the Florida Gators. Make that statement about Florida State winning a national championship. I can't wait to see Ben's blood pressure get up and have a little bit of a discussion with you about that thought.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that I'm cheering for him. I'm just thinking I think they can. I'm also a big Mike Norvell fan. I mean, God, Matt and I saw him firsthand what he did with and Memphis has a big game tomorrow at home, 6:00 at Simmons Liberty Bowl Stadium against Tulane. And I was texting Dr. Hardgrave a bunch this morning, who's the president of the University of Memphis, and he's going to be on the show with us tomorrow with Ken Capps and Bo Carter. And I'm going to tell you what, man, that's a big game for them. And, John, you know, I could just imagine what if I was the president of a university, who my two hires would be to run things around me. And I'm looking at both of them. Matt, you talked about both of y'all, and y'all got such a cool perspective because I hadn't spent any time in the Pacific Northwest. My dad's been to every state there is, and he always says, you know, you go out there, it's so beautiful. Yes. You can see how people can get distracted from other stuff, but it really is. And the folks out there, they care about winning and all. You know, the Oregon game against Washington, that's a big one. John, you know, all those Mountain West games. I mean, for one thing, it's the most beautiful venues out there. One of my friends grew up lifelong Georgia fan. Paul Wickenheiser, the Burgermeister. They moved out to Las Vegas. Now they live in Reno. His son ended up going to Utah State, Matthew. Lifelong Georgia fan. Went to Utah State. Your son's at Oregon now. Great timing. But, Matt, what is it? Why do people down here think that people out there don't care as much as we do? I mean, maybe you can say, well, that's obvious. Because I think they do.
You know, some of it is related to the time difference in the television watching. Most of us, like, I'll give you an example. I bought the Sling network for a month just so I could watch a couple Oregon games on the Pac-12 network. It's hard to get a Pac-12 game on. You got to go to a different app, and then sometimes you're up late at night. I watched Colorado and Arizona State late on Saturday night. It was a great ball game. Colorado found a way to win. But going back to your point, they just don't know enough about the culture. When we drove our son's vehicle out there, John, you'll appreciate this. We spent one night in Laramie, Wyoming, and I was just amazed at how cool of a venue. Yeah. We drove by the football stadium. We took some pictures. What's that roundhouse where the basketball team plays? I'm like, gosh, I could see myself retiring in Laramie, Wyoming, but it's really cold in the wintertime. I get that.
Yeah.
But it's so different than what we're accustomed to. That's part of it, I think. It's just then we drove near Salt Lake City, spent a night in Salt Lake. Drove by Utah, the University of the football stadium, really cool venue. Then we're going up north, going up through Logan. Then we went to Boise, and then just some great venues up there. Like, if you're a college football connoisseur, you really need to do a Northwest swing and go to 3 or 4 different venues. That's really neat.
Yeah, my son Max, about a month ago, we're on the way down to Orange Beach, and he sends all these pictures, and my other son's with Audrey and me. It's him. They're up there skateboarding on the blue turf at Boise. I'm like, what are you doing in Boise? I mean, of course, living in Moose, Wyoming. But by the way, John and Matt, John, you have to do this a lot. Wilson and Max, when they go to Denver and then they drive from there to Jackson, it's about 7.5 hours. And that interstate, they say, man, you're literally, of course, my kids don't use all these terms, but they say you're squeezing the steering wheel and your knuckles are about to pop because the wind just blows. They call it the high plain or the high plateau or something. You'll see 18-wheelers just thrown around like, sticks. But you just said it, Matt, the high performance altitude center out there, and there's a lot of great stuff that is going on. But I just think Matt and John, y'all can give a perspective that not even Bolt Upright, could give, but it's the games out there. John, did y'all ever play a game at Utah State in a blizzard?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, not even no hesitation.
Yeah, and those blizzards can occur from October on. I mean, we played BYU a couple of times and literally having to scrape the field, and you can't see the field, the hash marks or anything. So speaking of that, you got another good game tomorrow night. Utah State, they've had a tendency to spot other teams, 2 or 3 touchdowns early in the game and come back. But we were talking about Fresno, and they're a very good team too. Tomorrow night, Friday night action, Fresno at Utah State will be another good game.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm with you. Barrett Sallee last week put that stat out. For the next 46 days, uninterrupted, we will have either a college or a pro game or one of each on every night. Ain't life grand? I mean,
hey Rob,
how can you not love that?
I got to give a plug for one other game for tonight. This will be entertaining viewing for sure. West Virginia and Coach Neil Browne at Houston with Coach Dana Holmgren. Well, a lot of people don't realize Neil took over for Dana at West Virginia. Let's just say that that one could get a little bit chippy. I think West Virginia playing really well. Neil's got them playing well, but I think that's going to be a really good ball game tonight as well.
Yeah, Matt. Yeah,
I agree with John. West Virginia has had a couple of really good wins. They also beat a Texas Tech team that was really the start of Wyoming's season, John. They beat Texas Tech at Wyoming in like double overtime.
Yeah.
I know Oregon rallied in the fourth quarter to win at Tech, a really hard venue to win at. But I agree with John because I think tonight that's the game I'm going to watch because Houston has not really had I think maybe they're 3-3. They've not really had a great run since Dana's gotten there. But, I heard Dana's a heck of a football coach. That's what I've heard. But, Neil was he with you at Troy? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah. And this is a big year for him because a lot of people were saying they needed to see results this year. And so far, so good, right? So hope he keeps getting it done.
Yeah. One thing you're talking about Troy and ULM and App State and all. Go back to Monroe, Terry Bowden, and we were talking about him a minute ago. Someone in the first hour, Frank Duffy and Doug Dean was talking about Auburn's win, the catch in the swamp, which you can see over my shoulder. That's a painting that my dad did. He actually did that after the game down in Destin. As he always likes to say, he does his best work after his fourth scotch and water. But that's the catch. And he saved a bunch of copies of it for me. They made like 3,200 copies of it. And Terry Bowden, you get to spend time. I'd love to get him on the show because, when you hear him speak and you work with him, I mean, y'all are together. Growing up every day, drawing up plays at the kitchen table. And he said, one thing about my dad, he said, no matter where he traveled, and he spoke all over the country, he always made a point to get home late at night, or at least in the middle of the night. And when we got up for breakfast in the morning, Dad was at that table and we were talking football. But is it a lot of fun hanging out? And I mean, I know he's always working. He's myopically focused, and so are you.
Yeah.
But talked about him.
What
his goals are.
Just a great individual, and a lot of people don't realize he's got a law degree from Cumberland.
Oh yeah,
there in Birmingham. So he is extremely intelligent, always focused on football. And here I'll give you how the twists and turns of college athletics go. We leave tomorrow morning to go to San Marcos, Texas, to play Texas State.
Yeah.
And there's a guy, speaking of Auburn connections, a guy named TJ Finley is the starting quarterback at Texas State. So we'll have our work cut out for us this week, but look forward to the opportunity to get back in the win column this week in San Marcos.
Yeah. And speaking of, look at San Antonio, UT San Antonio, what their road runners are doing out there. What a road trip. And this is what I love is, and it gets boring talking about the same 4 or 5 schools. I love to celebrate the game. And Matt, you got renewal. We talked about the Deep South's oldest rivalry. Kroger versus the Piggly Wiggly. No, I'm kidding. Sewanee and Rhodes.
Yeah.
Is this the 150th time they've played her? I know Sewanee's field is the oldest field still in use. It's 130-something years old. But this game will be played over at Rhodes College. That is tradition. It never graduates. Shout out to Doug Dickey who said that. Always give credit to people who say those things.
It's been really a fun thing for me in my 33 years at the institution. Sewanee is our biggest rival in the football game. I think, Rob, we talked about this off air yesterday. The Oracle Cup is, I think Edmund Oracle was both involved. He was on our board and Sewanee's board at one time. And I think we may have been the former mayor of Memphis, if I'm not mistaken. I don't want to.
And Edmund Oracle Park is in Millington because we always swam in that in the Memphis and May triathlon, and it was very cold in early May.
But what's really neat about this, we've played close to 100 times, I think, and I think we're dead even. It's either it may be 43 and 43 with a bunch of ties. But we've won, I'm knocking on wood as I say this, we've won like 8 out of 10, I believe. So we're coming in at 4-2. They're 3-2. Big game for us, and we're at home, and go Lakes.
Yep, it's going to be it. Look, it's football. I love it, and you got the most beautiful inner city campus in America. John, I know you got to go. Hang on, Matt. Let people know how they can reach out to you and follow you and keep up with all the work you're doing, because you're heading out of town, tomorrow?
Yeah, headed to San Marcos. Actually, that's one thing a lot of people don't realize about Texas State, one of the fastest growing universities in the country. It sits equal distance between Austin and San Antonio, about 35 minutes from each. We're actually flying into Austin and staying out by the airport in Austin. But looking forward to the opportunity. ULMWarhawks.com. You can follow anything and everything Warhawk Athletics. John_Hartwell Twitter. Guys, as always, it's a pleasure to be with you guys. Rob, if you got room, I'd love to join you on Saturday morning to talk a little.
Absolutely. Look, and if you don't, here's what happens sometimes. If you don't get the link, just text me because I'll send it out. But we didn't see you last Saturday. If we don't, you're always welcome on here. Love having you on here. Okay.
No, sounds good. Hey, good luck in the big rivalry game this weekend, Matt.
You too, John. Go get them.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. I tell you one thing, Matt, this is what's so cool. And there's, this Memphis Tulane game tomorrow night. That's a big deal. And like I said, Dr. Hargrave, all right, Dr. Hargrave, we got action in here. We got action in the house. Delta going wild. But that's a big game for both Tulane and Memphis. Tulane is a great school. You get an MBA, MHA from Tulane, that's a big deal. Same thing like Rhodes College. Dr. Hargrave was brought to Memphis on a mission. What do you think is going to happen in that game? Memphis, pretty damn good. Seth Hennigan's pretty good quarterback. Another coach's son, another Texas high school prodigy.
The game's in Memphis. It's a night game. I'm hoping Tiger Nation will show out and have some. I'd love to see 35,000 people there. I hope we get a good crowd. The win against Boise after trailing 17-0, I think really boosted their confidence. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a close game plus or minus 3 either way. Obviously, I'm pulling for Memphis. Go Tigers, but I got to tell you, Tulane is really well coached. I love Willie Fritz and what he has brought to that program. He's been sought out multiple times in the last few years by other institutions. But I'm going to go Tigers. Go Memphis.
Yeah, I am too. It's going to be a big one. Hey, folks, got to have something to wear tomorrow night. Beautiful weather. Get out to Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. Charles Hall, his wife Laura, texted me and said they're getting 35, 40 boxes a day in. Filson, Schaefer, Danner, Hire, Light Boots, Old South, Devil Dog Jeans. Largest collection of duck heads I've ever seen. Over 7,000 pairs of men's and women's boots and kids' boots. This place is like going back in time, but they've got the most modern fashion styles of anybody. They've got blazers. Duckhead's got blazers out now, and they look great, Matt. That's on the historic square, Collierville, Tennessee, HewlettandDunn.com. Order from anywhere. Do yourself a favor. Get out there on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. And Gateway Tire and Service Center. They go the distance for their customers and the communities where they are. And Gary Harris, hopefully going to be back on with us Saturday morning. Remember, it's going to be a big weekend for college football. Miss Rubens Rubs, they go good on anything. Yeah, Tom in Crossville, Tennessee. We have the biggest Buc-ee's outside of any Buc-ee's that's not in the state of Texas. I understand it's 75,000 square feet. Lots of Vols gear. Hey, folks, most often we see the face of Christ unleashed among us. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. You talk about we're all blessed. Yes, we are. Go out and bless others. You never know what kind words and kind deeds will do. Hard work works. Anything in life worth having is worth fighting for. Thanks to all of our sponsors, our listeners, and our viewers. Until tomorrow, we are out of here. Have a great day. We will see you tomorrow. I'm going to play that wonderful end music. See ya.
You didn't play anything.
Oh, here we go.